And we are recording live.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for checking out the show. Today, we got a sweet guest for you, our good friend who is a philanthropist who brings purpose to his work in enterprise technology by funding charitable projects. Our good friend, please welcome the man, the myth, the legend, Tommy Holmes. Tommy, thanks so much for coming on the show today. How you doing, brother?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much for having me and for that ludicrous introduction.
I've seen you guys get together before. Both of you get pretty ludicrous. It's pretty funny.
Pretty hyped up, yeah.
Gotta bring some hype. Gotta bring some hype.
Yeah,
it's real. It's real today.
It's real today. So what we do on our show here is we do something which is called Two Truths and a Lie, right? Which we've done with many people, and we've got a couple of things on Tommy here. Tommy sent me a few things, but then I had a couple kind of up my sleeve as well. So what we're going to do is Devin and I are going to guess which is the lie out of these three items that I'm going to read out here.
Well, you got more. Why don't you just read them all then?
Okay, I'll read them all. I'll read everything.
I've
got a bunch. Just confuse everybody. So we got a whole bunch of lies, and we got. We got a couple of truths.
I haven't seen the ones he's made up, so they could quite potentially be anything.
I like it with a couple of truths and a couple of lies.
That's true. Okay, well, this could be the whole show right here. Okay, so, number one, I am fluent in German and Luganda. Okay, I apologize for the pronunciation of.
No, that was perfect. Language
Luganda.
of Uganda. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Luganda is the language of Uganda. Okay,
it's one of them. Yeah, one of them.
Did not know that. Cool. That's incredible. I made the finals of Britain's Got Talent. Made the finals of Britain's Got Talent. Britain's Got Talent. Right?
Britain's Got Talent. Baby.
Another one here. I headbutted a prime minister. That's very possible.
I like that. I don't want that one to be a lie.
Yeah. The next one here. I caught malaria while volunteering in Uganda. Yeah. So we've got Luganda and we've got Uganda. Interesting. Another one here. Devin. I beat Devin at beer pong in a tiny village in southern France. Double, triple redemption.
Oh my goodness. No way.
That can't be true.
That has gotta be a lie. Fabricated.
And I didn't get the minimum grades required for university. So let's try and pick out I don't know. Let's pick out a lie out of this one. Dev, what do you think? Which are lies?
Oh my goodness.
Only you guys know the beer pong one.
Let's go. Yeah, that's gotta be fake. No, let's see. Not the prime. I want the headbutting prime minister one to be true for some sick reason. That just sounds hilarious. Let's go the fluent in the two languages, because I know you speak German, but I know you probably speak both. I don't know, man. I'm lost here, really. Nige, why don't you go first?
Okay, I'm gonna hit you with the headbutting the prime minister is one of them, and beating Devin at beer pong in France. I don't know. I remember that match. It went on all night. That you guys, but I don't know who won. It was some crazy double redemption or triple redemption at the end, and somebody won it. Somebody got it and actually won it. I don't know which one of the two of you, or maybe you're both on the same team. I don't remember, but
maybe we don't remember. So
I think due to the nature of beer pong and the culture that surrounds it, we probably don't remember much from that evening. But I remember it went on all night. But I was playing with my dad.
Oh yes.
You were, yeah.
I think, and like all those terminology, like redemption and stuff, I'm pretty sure Devin was the only one playing that knew the rules. So I'd be fairly confident to say that he won, or at least I hope he did.
Do you have any recollection?
Game, God. Oh man. No, I'm not too sure. I'm gonna go with the made it to the finals in Britain Got Talent, because I know you did a bit of that, but I'm not sure the finals. And let's go with the two languages, you being able to be fluent in German, but not the other one, however you say it.
Yeah, very good. I was on I basically just did like the first couple of rounds of Britain's Got Talent with some guys from school. We did like a jokey barbershop quartet thing. It was pretty much cut from the show, other than a bit of us warming up, which is fair enough. And yeah, the languages, I spent some time in Germany teaching, and I've obviously been to Uganda a bunch of times, but I'm not fluent in either of them. But I thought I might convince you I was.
Almost, pretty much had me.
So Simon Cowell cut you guys. He's that way, just chucked you out the door.
He wasn't even there. Like we had, he was only doing the finals that year. So I think David Hasselhoff stepped in to do like the first section, but it was such a mental experience.
I bet. That's crazy. Unbelievable. Yeah.
But you guys didn't have a sad story. So they were like, no.
I remember that was a big mistake that we made. I mean, it was being honest, but like also it's quite artificial, the process. So we were actually the first on stage on the first televised performance. And what that means is like they pulled us to the front of the queue, and you hear like them warming up the audience. So they're getting them to boo and chant off, 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 and they're like slamming the buzzers and getting them to celebrate. So we were all like kind of getting worried about it. And then like Ant and Dec, who are like, I think you guys have like Terry Crews or whoever, like our kind of presenters, they're not looking at you at all. And then it's kind of like a 3, 2, 1, and they start talking to you. You do 30 seconds with them, and then you get tossed out on stage. And we did this performance, and you've got no earpiece in, so you can't hear anything. But fortunately, it went really well, and we got we got yeses from everyone. There was a standing ovation. It was like a really pretty cool experience to have. But then you walk off stage and you get given this piece of paper that's like, regardless of what the judges said, you can be cut from any point. That's not the thing that decides it. But what was even weirder is when we got back to the hotel where they were hosting the whole thing, we then did our pre-audition interview. So that interview that you see where they're like, how do you think that it's going to go? Like, we'd just done the audition like 5 minutes ago, and we were absolutely pumped with adrenaline from what happened. But we had to try and coyly be like, oh, I think it's going to go quite well. Right. But they asked us like what the purpose of it was and what we were going to spend the money on. And we were kind of like, oh, we got drunk at a school thing and thought this would be a good idea. Like, it's not a particularly touching story for middle-class kids just having a laugh. So I'm not surprised we got cut.
Oh, that's good. Oh, man. And then, so you're now, you said you're 28. You're 28 now, right?
Yeah.
28. And then a few years back, you were doing, you did, I think, two trips to Uganda. You were in Uganda, was it once? And then you went
back?
I've done
a bunch. Oh, yeah.
You did a bunch. Yeah.
I'm trying to think when I think I went like 2016, the first time.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible. I liked following you on your Instagram and all that. It was all the really cool stuff that you were doing there. So what were you doing down there? What made you think I want to go to Uganda? Like, out of all the places in Africa, that was, we hear crazy stories about Uganda here, and going all the way back, right? So
like anyone else, like I remember at one point I almost came to Vancouver and was going to do some acting stuff with Dev, but that's because I met you guys, and Uganda was a really similar thing. I took the opportunity to go and work in the States doing like a Camp America, like sleepaway camp. So you're in the States for 3 months at a time. And the camp I was working for was a Jewish camp. I'm not, but it just happened to be. And the guy that ran the camp, he was at this sort of Jewish conference in California. And that conference had decided it would be really interesting to pull in Jews that had had a much different experience from really remote places. So they'd gone to this community called the Abiyudaya in Uganda, and they'd, met this Jewish community who had been persecuted by Idi Amin and sort of fled into the bush, but essentially have only been Jews for a much shorter period of time than that incredibly, long-standing religion. We're talking like 100 years. So they were kind of converted by missionaries and stuff like that, but they live a very authentic Jewish lifestyle. So this guy, Yoash, was like a strong member in the community and, helping out in the synagogue and doing different things. So they decided that he would be the one to come to America. But this is a guy who, lives in a place with no running water or electricity and is rarely in, like a personal car, let alone an aeroplane. And, they flew him out to this conference and they had him speak, and he's an amazing orator. So my camp director was at that conference, and he was like, "You're amazing. I want to help. What about if I get you to come out and work a summer at the camp, because we're allowed to bring in people from abroad?" So he agreed to sort of like pay his flights and knock it off the wages. So I ended up working with like 200 super rich Long Island Americans, and then like this one guy from like a super remote part of Uganda. And at the time, I wanted to get into some kind of charity work. And, you know, I had the same sort of worries that other people do about whether or not the money gets directed to the cause. And I didn't want to be a salaried person taking money from a charity. And then I suddenly thought, hey, this is great. What if I just ask Yoash if I can come and live with him, having no idea what his like digs were like. So that's what I did. We gave him a phone, and we raised like $2,000 for him when he was there, for him to go and set up a school, which is something that they needed. And he got the building project started. And as soon as I saw that was, you know, going well, I just messaged him saying, I could teach in the school if you'll let me live with you. And he was like, yeah, but I live in a slum. Like, but that was made it even more exciting, right? So, you know, I worked for a little bit here, saved the money, and just moved into the slum and started teaching in that school.
Wow. That's incredible. And then you were there. So when you returned, did you go back to the same place? Were you?
Yeah. So basically what happened was I went out there with like way too big of a plan about what I was going to do. Like I didn't really know what I was going to walk into, but when I got into the school, there's all kinds of not just issues within the school, but within the community and stuff like that. And I was thinking, like, I'm going to change all of this and fix it all. And then, you know, the idea was I would get started with that, and then I would go and study some sort of international development or whatever. I wanted to do more studying because I didn't really know how to work that in that industry. But then when I got there, I realized that it was a lot easier to work with one or two people that I trust and that were responsive to the help that I was trying to give. So Yoash, who basically looked after me whilst I was there, I started helping him with projects with the school. And then basically one of my students that I got close with, who's from a really tough background, I kind of agreed with him, okay, if you get this grade at the end, I'll send you to a private school, because, you know, if he lives away from home, he can have flushing toilets and light to study in the evening and learn computer skills and stuff that we just weren't able to offer at the primary school that I was working in, but also the secondary schools weren't great in the area. So then I kind of came home and was like, I can't support them financially if I'm trying to go down this low earning, but, you know, very rewarding career path of working in a charity. So that's kind of like, as Devon was saying, like, you know, I try and bring purpose into the work. Like I'd never wanted to work in the city before, but I suddenly thought, okay, well, if I can earn money in the city and pump it into this project, I'm going to be more effective than if I take a job with Oxfam and get, you know, deployed across a bigger campaign. So since then, I've been back 4 or 5 times, every time going back. But then remotely, I pay the school fees for like 4 kids to go to school.
Okay.
When they're not in school, they stay with my friends, and we make sure that they kind of have their basic requirements and try and be a mentor, you know, as well as just a donor.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. That's a different spin on it, because we all think about, going and volunteering, which is great. But to be able to, create something on the outside so you can actually give more, in your work and what you're doing. That's a great way to look at it. And you started off on this journey when you were like 23, 22, 23.
I'm trying to think, like, because I went to America the first time, I think I was 20. I think I went the second or third year, so maybe I was 21. I definitely got there when I'd quit drinking, and I quit drinking when I was like literally just before I turned 22. So I'm going to say I was 22 when I landed in Uganda the first time. So it's been going on about 6 years.
Wow. And then I don't know what trip, but you got malaria, right? Is that correct?
That was the first one.
That was the first one. Oh,
that was literally, yeah. Like, and honestly, like, it's really funny when you brought that up, because I don't want to sound like I'm trying to make myself sound like worldly or anything, but certainly in like the Ugandan context, malaria is not that serious of a thing to have. You know, like my friend Yoash there, like him and his kids are getting it every year, sometimes a couple of times per year,
Oh,
and you get treatment for it, you know. So, but obviously, as like a super ignorant Westerner at the time, I was just lying up in bed, like, okay, this is it, I'm dying, and they were just laughing at me. It was like, it was pretty scary at the time, and it was weird
yeah, I
going
bet.
through the kind of medical system in super remote Uganda, but they were so nice to me, and I recovered pretty quickly, so it was all good.
Wow.
So do you stay with your buddy every time that you go down there?
Oh, dude, like he's made that so difficult to do now. Like,
Oh yeah.
the thing is with the Ugandans, particularly in this area, is like there's a real culture of helping other people. So when I met Yoash, he was incredibly poor himself. So he was just living with him and his wife. And that's like the absolute maximum he could afford. And he was renting, so he couldn't really do much more than that. But since then, like other sponsors have got involved. There's actually quite a few of us who work with Yoash now, which has really taken the burden off. But essentially, one of those donors just decided, okay, instead of small projects, we're gonna build a house for you. So he's got like a reasonably sized house now, but it just means that there's always 15 relatives in the house, because he will look after anyone he can look after and feed them and send them to school. So we, like, when we go to Uganda now, my girlfriend is Ugandan. It means that we can stay with her mum, like in the city. We'll do a few hotels and stuff, and make the trip about a few other things. She also runs a charity a bit down the road, and then I'll try and spend a week with him. But I remember one of the times I went, I just spent, before he started moving people in, I went and stayed with him just like in the bush for a couple of weeks, and we just did nothing but play cards, and it was amazing. It's a really cool place.
Wow.
So what's the stability of Uganda like these days? I know for years they had, with Idi Amin, and
Yeah, well,
it's an interesting period in time.
it's a pretty controversial time at the moment. So essentially, they've just had the same president like do a sixth term, and the thing that's controversial about it is that essentially he's kind of changed the rules as time's gone by in order to allow him to stay. There was actually a point where he aged out, like in the original sort of constitution.
Yeah.
He could only be sort of 60, and then he just passed another law to say that you could be older. But whenever there's an election there's a lot of controversy where the opponents are being put on house arrest or kidnapped, or in some cases tortured and beaten up, and there were gunshots. And so there's lots of people that would argue that those elections have been rigged. So it's weird because it's a democracy, but it doesn't necessarily feel like that. And you have a situation where someone created a democracy by overthrowing it with a military coup. So it's a very unusual situation. But that being said, you couldn't find more hospitable people. It's a really different. It's quite hard to explain that. Like if you go up north in England, people are quite hospitable there in the sense that they'll say hi to you in the street, and you have a chat with the person at the cashier when you're checking out of a store. In Uganda, if you chat to someone, like, they'll want you to come into their house, and like they'll want to feed you and have a drink with you and introduce you to their whole family. So you wouldn't know that they're finding it tough.
It is really interesting, because I know we were really fortunate. We were in Kenya and then Ethiopia about 2 years ago, and we were with one of Devin's buddies, Chip Duncan, who's a documentary filmmaker, and he's been filming the Maasai and filming Ethiopia, and from Kenya through to Ethiopia for 20 plus years. And we're also with another one of his friends, Salim Amin, whose father was a journalist in Africa, quite a few years ago. And he was friends with Idi Amin. He was friends with all these people, and he has this film footage. And actually, he has, I think, Idi Amin's uniform in his office in Nairobi. We saw it. We were in his, because the father died in a hijacking. So Mohammed Amin, the journalist, died in the hijacking of a Ethiopian Airlines that crashed into the ocean, and he was one of the guys that died in it. So the sons carried on the legacy. But what we found, it's with the Maasai, with the people in Kenya, with the people in Ethiopia, they're just absolutely beautiful people, and they're incredible people. And it was really interesting. We did a land trek through Ethiopia, and stopping in all these little villages along and people were just wonderful, beautiful. And I always thought Ethiopia was, the 1984 famine and whatnot. Everybody was starving, but it wasn't that way. But then we came out, and then, 8, 9 months later, now there's a civil war going on in Ethiopia again, just like that. And the all those beautiful people that we met, they're having to, run for their lives, and it changed. It's just really, it's horrific.
That's really
Uh,
sad. I
yeah,
think that
I know.
the kind of first point that you were making is something that I try to talk to people when I notice their reaction about me going to Uganda. Similarly, like, I don't know if you saw what's going on in Israel at the moment. Like, there was a whole lot of missile stuff last night. Like, I have a bunch of friends in Israel and have visited it a bunch of times. And there's the perception that because it's a country at war, that it must be terrifying, and bombs going off everywhere and people panicking. And it's not. Again, I had a great time there. People were incredibly friendly. We had all the nice things like nice food and beaches and stuff like that. But they were really interesting people. And similarly in Uganda, like, yes, where Yoash lives, there's an incredible amount of poverty as we know it, in terms of people living hand to mouth and working for very, very little amounts of money. But actually, even visiting those places is great, because these aren't unhappy people. And it's not sort of like they're just gritting and bearing it and being positive. Like, they have a genuine way of living and culture that's totally different from ours. And it's very centered around people and relationships, and being really, like, really intimate and deep friendships. It's very, very slow, and there's a lot of respect. So I always now, like, I was actually saying to Connie, I was saying to Nigel, I was thinking of taking a year off before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And we started listing off places that we wanted to go. And I'm like, actually, now I want to see Somalia, and I want to see Congo, because, like, these are places that I previously was like, right, I'm never going there because of what I've seen on the TV.
Yes.
But that as long as you can meet the right people, particularly if you can meet a local, you have a fantastic opportunity to see a culture that otherwise you wouldn't be exposed to.
Exactly.
Wow,
yeah.
yeah.
We were invited by Chip, who took us through Ethiopia and Kenya, to go into Afghanistan. And at first I was like, are you kidding me? And he goes, well, once you get through Kabul and then you get into the north, it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. And the people are absolutely incredible. You have to get through a couple of little things to get into the country. But so, yeah, I mean, we were seriously considering doing that. And we were going to do a backcountry ski tour through the, Afghanistan and
wow, that would have been amazing.
It's still on the table. It's still a possibility. Then COVID hit, and then everything kind of changed. So Tommy, what are you doing? What are you doing now? Are you in London now? Is that where you are? You're in the city?
Well, physically, I'm in Harpenden, Hertfordshire at the moment, because we're in the process of moving to Australia. We've rented out our place in London, but I'm sat here waiting for a visa for months and months. So we're a little bit in limbo at the moment. But job wise, so from that role that I took originally to kind of fund that project in Uganda, that escalated into another job, and I kind of found a niche in sales that worked for allowing me to run my project, but also having a job that I was good at and I could earn from. So currently in London, I sell basically data and software primarily to banks and casinos. So for the last sort of 2 years, I've been working between London, Malta, and Gibraltar, doing software sales.
Okay. Wow, that's incredible. So you I know I talked to you about 6 months ago, and you were talking about, possibly taking a year off. And then what I would kind of want to know is, with your friends and your peers, what's the mindset in the UK? Because we have a bit of a mindset over here on the west coast of North America and London, and then you have New Yorkers and the youth with the jobs. And so you seem to be wired in kind of a socially impactful way. Like, I think that you generally want to make a difference in the world. I mean, from your experiences in Africa and everything that I've ever seen, what are other younger people thinking? Is it the old way that I grew up? I grew up the way it was like, you go to university, you get a good job, you work your way up, and then whatever, you retire when you're 65, and you work. And none of this social stuff it didn't exist back then. are younger people kind of looking these days now for, when they actually, look for a job or create a job? Is it more, I want to do something to make a difference, I want to make something that has a bit of a social impact? Or is that just kind of you, or is that kind of more of a general?
Well, it's certainly not just me, but in terms of me and my friends,
Yeah.
I very much associate with that kind of you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with cliche. So
Sure.
I spend a lot of my time with people that I think are trying to do purposeful things and motivate me to do it in the same way. I think I also have to be cognizant that other people come from a very different background. So I have
Exactly.
friends who come from much poorer backgrounds who actually,
Yeah.
even in their late 20s, are still in a stage where they're really building and trying to build security. Fortunately for me, I kind of reached a point where you have at least enough savings that if it fell through, you're kind of going to be okay. And you have to draw that line as quickly as possible. So that, when I was talking to Nigel, it was like, okay, I've done this and it's funded my purposeful thing, but what's going to be the next thing? And everything that's come to me in my life has been from meeting that special person that became the catalyst to the next thing.
Right.
So I thought to myself, right, well, if that isn't happening at the moment, but I feel like I'm doing the right things, then I'm going to switch it up and I'm going to go to a bunch of new places. So I thought, right, well, if I just go and just tour Africa, if I use my savings and I just tour Africa for 6 months and meet lots of people like Yoash, whether or not that takes me to another paid job or another charitable job, or that person makes me then want to go on to South Africa and see something there, that was what I wanted to do. I think like in the city now, unfortunately, certainly in the industry that I work in, there are a lot of people that want to do good, but those are not really the people that large corporates are looking for necessarily. I mean, the big money making machines, when you're picking your cogs to work within that business, I look after, say, like a $3-4 million a year business, and let's say my job is to put another $1 million on top of that. In the sales industry, you're paid commission to do that. So for them, the ideal candidate is someone that is really, really driven by making as much commission as possible, because the more that they want the commission, the more that they'll bill to the company. So I think, in the city, you're not really being encouraged to do purposeful things. But one thing that is really changing is the requests that people have to business seem to be a lot more around the lifestyle that you can live. Because whereas before people were like, I'll live in the middle of the city and I'll come into the office at 6 a.m. and I'll leave at 10 p.m. so long as I can make a stupid amount of money. I think people are now thinking, actually, I can make 70% of stupid money or 50% of stupid money if you let me work from home whenever I want to. Or, in COVID, I've got friends who have moved down to Cornwall. It's like 5 hours away. On the coast, and they're living by the beach, is surrounded by beautiful countryside, and I'm in a gardenless, balconyless, tiny shoebox apartment paying 3 times what they are. So I think people are thinking more about how they spend their life, but unfortunately I wouldn't say people are trying to be more impactful.
Yeah. And yeah, interesting. Sorry, Deb, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, no, I just have a quick little note. Well, you were saying like before, it kind of just like fell into place that you were able to go and do these things, and then you just decided to go and do them. And it seems like you were driven at such a young age to do philanthropy and stuff and work like that. So what is it? There's a spark about you. There's a drive. I know I've met you. I can feel it. Like, was there a moment where you were just like, this is why I'm going to go do this? Did you have a why moment, or you're just like, I just want to help as many freaking people as I can? Like, you saw where you came from. Okay. I can give back, or what was
definitely the last one that I think, there's a bit of guilt there that I really feel like I've been given pretty much all the opportunities that someone could want. It doesn't mean that there aren't challenges in my life, but I was born to parents that did really well, career-wise. So they sent me to a really great, really safe school, and I was given all the extracurricular stuff I could ever wanted, and they helped me through university and all of that stuff. So I was coming from an incredibly privileged place, and I think as a much younger adult, like between sort of 18 and 20, I really struggled with how unfair that was. But me feeling that's unfair doesn't really help the situation at all. So then, but then I started to think about it as a system of like, okay, well, if the people that are super well looked after, or let's say privileged, are looking after the disenfranchised, then it kind of makes sense and it almost justifies it, you know. So if I was privileged enough to get into a place where I can go abroad and meet these people, if those opportunities then springboard me into helping people, then it kind of makes up for it's like, okay, it was worthwhile because that turned into lots of people, rather than me just being like, yeah, I win, like I've got the nice car and the nice house and stuff like that. That didn't really sit with me. And in terms of doing the different things, like my biggest fear is like not living a purposeful life. Like when I imagine myself being like, however far I make it, let's say like 80 years, looking back and being like, okay, so you went to the city every day and you earned pretty good money, so you got a house and you had kids or whatever, like those are all respectable lives. But personally, I think probably as an atheist as well, like I've got nowhere to go after this life. So I just wanted to make sure that I'd done something. So when I was like 19, 20, I set myself this rule of like, I'm going to sign myself up for things that I'm terrified of.
Yes.
So like as soon as I left school, like the first thing I did was I signed myself up to go to Berlin and learn German. And my German was so horrible. And I went on my own and I moved into an apartment where no one spoke English, but it was perfect because I didn't have enough money to go home. So from that point onwards, I had a great experience. So then I signed myself up for America. And then when I met Yoash, and you know, as I said, I wanted to do something like that. It just seemed like the obvious thing to do. Like when I was thinking to myself, but I can't go and live with him, then the kind of penny dropped, like, well, that's exactly what you should do. If you're too scared to do it, book the flight, and then you haven't got any money left, you're going to have to go.
That's incredible. Push the comfort zone, basically. Always be pushing the comfort zone. Wow. No, that is incredible.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, whenever I've been pushed, when I for some reason operate best when I'm outside of my comfort zone. If I'm in that cushy, you kind of get, yeah, I'm cool here, and then, but as soon as you get pushed and outside, that's when you really operate. I do anyway at my best. And I've heard studies that, you know, the more you get pushed and the more you operate outside of your comfort zone, that your brain actually rewires and it can handle more and more of these situations, right? And it actually, it actually rewires itself.
Totally. I mean, I can empathize with that. And even at work, you know, I get so frustrated when I'm doing basically the stuff I should be doing, like the stuff that I'm qualified to be doing. But as soon as I joined the company, I wanted to work on bigger products or bigger projects, because you're out of your depth and it's really exciting. You're frantically finding out whether or not you can do it. And that becomes addictive. And you want to constantly be doing the thing that is pushing you into that zone where you're like, oh my God, can I survive this?
Yeah.
And if you have the opportunity to make that be a worthwhile thing to doing as well, then you've kind of hit the nail on the head, because I could live a fulfilling life by treating myself, or I can live a fulfilling life by challenging myself in the way that will also help someone else. So that's kind of the thing I'm trying to figure out at the moment of like, what's the way that I can live a life that terrifies me thinking about it now, but will be really rewarding doing it and will also help someone else.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, he grew up on kind of the other side of the tracks in Montreal, had a really tough childhood, and was pushed and pushed and pushed, and became uber successful, very humble guy, and he's been giving back, building shelters for homeless women and tons and tons of stuff all around the world. And he said to me, many years ago, he said that, this happened. He believes that this happened to him, and now he has a great responsibility. So it's he's privileged now, and like we are privileged, but with this privilege, I do believe there's a great responsibility for us to help and give back, and like they say, the cliche, make the world a better place. And I really do that. And with business people, I operate in the business world, in the entrepreneurial world, and I belong to all these conclaves of entrepreneurs. And I think it's, our responsibility to do good and to make our world a better place and do good with our companies as well, and we do operate better in that, when we're outside of our comfort zone, so yeah. So now you are moving to Australia. You're waiting for your papers.
Yeah, we're just waiting for the papers. So like basically we got to the point that we decided as a couple, like, we need to go somewhere else and see what we can do there. And I actually chatted to Nigel, and we had it all mapped out. I was ready to hand in my resignation, and we were going to start in Africa and see what happens. And then COVID struck. And at the same time, there was an opportunity with work to relocate to Australia. So we kind of sat down and thought, well, Australia doesn't really fit the profile of the type of company, but that's not true. There's loads of ways that you can help. And my girlfriend runs a consultancy working with like social enterprise businesses in the developing world. So she's used to working with Africa, but there's no reason that she can't work with the Aboriginal community or with Papua New Guinea or other places that are local. So we basically saw an opportunity to change our environment. But I mean, I did the interviews in April 2021, and we're still waiting for a visa in May 2022. So it's been a really, really long process. Wow. But yeah, that's the plan, is to get out this year.
Wow, interesting. Actually, my other son, Dylan, and Dev's brother here, I think he's heading down to Australia, New Zealand, I think in the fall too, to live there for a while as well.
Oh, that's so cool. I'll try and track him down if we're there at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's really cool. Any questions there, Dev?
I mean, not really. I mean, that was just like a lot of knowledge. And like, Tommy, you're such an awesome dude. And I know we've known each other for like, a little while now, but every time we talk, I feel like I learn a little bit more about you. And I think if more people can hear this, or more of the youth can hear this and understand that, yeah, we come from, or if they come from a great family, that if we do just kind of like almost share the wealth and help people who are in a less fortunate circumstance, then yeah, like, again, the cliche thing, the world will be a better place for all of its inhabitants. And yeah, so
you
that was
guys,
just a thought.
You guys are flattering me a lot. I was saying to the guys before we started that I was a bit worried when you guys called me on, that you maybe thought that I did something else, and it's intimidating for me. But this is this podcast is an example of what I was saying, of doing something that I'm not particularly comfortable with. I haven't been on a podcast before, and I haven't written a book, and I'm not like Nigel, you're like a CEO and founder of a business, and you've literally traveled the entire world with your family. So it's an intimidating discussion, but I think like I kind of made some notes beforehand of like, if I could try and get anything across, it's not like I've had this incredible career or anything, but in terms of like doing philanthropy or like doing good for others, or certainly I agree with, like, if you're in a privileged position, even if it's not true that you have a responsibility, in big terms, impose that responsibility on yourself. But you don't need to work for Save the Children or Oxfam or something to help someone. Like, I guarantee that people that are lucky enough like us to have traveled to so many places have met people from whether it's at home or whether you've had the opportunity to travel somewhere to go surfing and you've met someone locally that you really liked and you had time to get to know them and trust them. It really doesn't cost a huge amount of money. When I started sponsoring those kids, I was earning £18,000 a year. It's not a huge salary living in London. But it was enough to be able to send over £100, £200 every now and then to pay off school fees or to get clothes or books or whatever. And then it builds as you do. So I think people should look more frequently for opportunities to do that kind of micro philanthropy. And if, as you said, if loads of us young people did it, we could make a really big impact over a long period of time.
Yeah, I had an experience, and we were, I think it was in 2012. I was in Guatemala, and we were in the jungle. We were down there for the Mayan calendar changeover, the little 2012 so-called end of the world thing, which actually isn't. The Mayans never said that. It was just a new era, and I was having a hard time because I thought I had been doing all these things, like we go to Mexico and help build homes for the homeless and doing all this stuff, and I was having a hard time. And we were doing a little bit of silent meditation, so I went and I leaned up against a kapok tree, a big massive tree in the jungle, And I sat down and I just wasn't into, doing this whole process here. So I just sat there and I thought, and I looked down and I saw this whole string of cutter ants, the cutter ants that carry all the little twigs and everything through the jungle. And they were right in front of me. And I'm amazed that I actually didn't step on them. And I sat down and I watched these little guys, and they were just carrying their little bit back to their nest. And I had a bracelet on my wrist, and I put it and I blocked them. And they kind of looked at it and they kind of figured out, and they went around it. And I just looked at them, and then I put it back on, and then I stood back up, and then I walked back, and I realized that, hang on a second, Nigel, you do make a difference. All the little bits that you're doing, you may not think it's making a difference to change the world, but collectively, like those ants, like those cutter ants, everybody's doing their little bit, and collectively it makes a massive change. So people like yourself, Tommy, and all these people that we do our little bit, and we may not think it's a lot, but collectively it's massive, and it does actually make a huge difference. And the more people that's
exactly it.
Yeah,
I completely agree, and that's actually a much more articulately put version of what I'm trying to say, is that, like I said, when I got to Uganda, my idea was like, I'm going to stop every parent from beating their children, and I'm going to make all the teachers teach differently, and I'm going to completely stop the gender issues here, and I'm going to change all the women's hygiene ideas and stuff like that. And it was just impossible, and I spread myself way too thin. And actually, if I'm being honest with myself, I was barely impactful, because I was trying to solve all of these things in a tiny way.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, focusing on like one kid, and talking to him on a regular basis and understanding him, and like all the nuanced problems that comes up in a human's life, not just like when you need money, but when you have challenges with family or friends or teachers, whatever it is. If everyone was doing that for one person, I think that we would have a more comprehensive result in the end, rather than like one or two of us trying to help an entire village of people move forward. And I think, like, when you're sat there in the jungle, you're thinking like, why aren't I changing the entire world?
Exactly.
And that shows how big your heart is, but that's not actually where the real work is done. And my personal experience, and when I talk to other people, is like, actually try and keep your project as small as possible, and make sure that you fully understand it and you can commit to it, and then you'll see it actually be successful and turn into something great. And those kind of projects go on to help other people, and then it builds like that. So I don't think you've got any worry, Nigel, about whether or not you've been impactful.
Yeah, but it's really cool it's really cool where you're doing this little thing, and then say you bring a few friends with you, and then a year or two goes by, and then you see them, they're off in Africa or they're wherever, and because they've got had that little aha moment. They've had that little light bulb go off, going, oh, that was the most incredible experience. Even going to a soup kitchen and volunteering, serving soup or whatever it is, going out and giving blankets. And it opens up like that one little step. This is another thing, a friend of mine, the same guy, actually, David Ash. We interviewed him, and I was struggling again because I wanted to help, but I didn't know where. I was raising a young family. I had my business, and I just go volunteer. Are you kidding me? I haven't got time to do that. And I asked him, I said, how do you do so much? And he just said, Nigel, it's not that complicated. He says, do a little tiny thing. Take that first little step. Stop on the corner with a homeless person, have a chat with them, give them maybe $2, $5. Don't ask where it's going. Just, and it'll all make sense after that. And that was probably some of the best advice that I've ever had.
Well, and it's like, the thing is, we keep saying it's like all the small things, right, will create a bigger picture. But at the end of the day, it's like, helping that one kid in Uganda, you think of it as like a small thing, or we're building the one house in Mexico for that one family is a small thing, where it really isn't. It's a massive thing, quite possibly the biggest moment of those people's lives. So it is a huge impact, and it changes their hearts. And of course, the more people we can bring to it, we can make it into something bigger. But it's I think we downplay it a lot, like it's a little thing, but it's not. It's a big.
The knock-on effect is you'll never see it. What the knock-on effect is, but
that's not the reason.
Okay. That's okay, right? That's okay.
It's so funny that you're saying that about your friend. Like I started with homeless people doing the same thing. Like I had absolutely no idea what to do, and I didn't have any money. So I started by making a commitment to myself that I would sit down for like 15-20 minutes with every homeless person that would let me. And I did that in London, I did it in Germany, I did it in Vienna. And you just and some people the conversation goes nowhere. Other people, you learn loads about them. And I've chatted to people before who haven't had a conversation with someone in a really long period of time.
Yeah.
But then you just allow yourself sometimes to let that spiral into something else. And for me, you just get those moments sometimes when you're talking to someone. I was talking to people in Uganda, and he was one of 200 kids that I taught, but you just really got the impression that this is someone that would be willing to go all the way with you if you contribute, that they'd be willing to be really responsive and get involved with that and stuff too. And then you just go for it. And like you were saying, in terms of bringing your friends in, I mean, Nigel, you're really good at that. And I think when we were chatting about like traveling and having those experiences, you were saying like so many people ask me and none of them do it. I have hundreds of people, even like when I go to client meetings and I do my introductions, I often explain that I also do this separately. And the clients will say, oh, how can we sponsor your charity? And I'll say, no, it's not a registered charity. And then they don't want to get involved. But even like one of my good friends who's kind of like the old school dev with the Mohican playing beer pong, like one of my friends who's still living that life in his late 20s and 30s, he asked me how he could get involved because he felt like he was mostly just sort of consuming. And I carefully introduced him to a student that I was already paying fees for, and we kind of did some introductions. They sent videos to and from each other, they did letters. And he just contributed at first whatever money he felt like he had at the end of the quarter or half year or once a year or whatever. And then slowly, whereas before he didn't know what to do, he now has this person in Uganda that he's communicated with. And he messaged me the other day and he was like, I actually just got a great bonus from work and I don't know what this is for, but I just want you to like sort something out for her using this money. And we were able to constructively put that into a project. So I think loads of people would do, you guys are being really nice to me about doing this. I think loads of people would do this if they felt like they had a genuine connection to someone or something. I also don't like giving money to Oxfam and Save the Children and all those things. It's not like they're not great companies, but I don't know where my $100 is going. And I don't get to feel that connection and be involved in the way that I want to. So I think like you have a bit of a responsibility again, that if like that Mexican village that you're working with, you have a connection with those people and you have someone in that community that you trust. When someone comes and says, hey, Nigel, Devon, how do I get involved in that kind of thing? Should I sign up to this camp or whatever? You should say, no, I actually have someone already that I'm working with. And if you've got a small amount of money, then we can help him get started in a business or we can help his kids get to school. So I think helping people get that connection would probably make people want to get involved more. I can totally understand why you wouldn't want to be involved in something that you don't have any attachment to.
And I also find, like you said, like giving, checks and whatnot to Oxfam, the United Way, and all these, it's great. To write a check is great, but there's nothing more for me anyway to like give of yourself. And I know we've got limited capacity in giving of ourselves, but it's that actually feeling and touching and getting involved. And then as a family, like I know, our family like doing it together with all the kids when they were small. I can't think of anything more powerful for a person or a family unit to actually volunteer together. Especially when they're young, it just is, and I, we're helping, but we get a heck of a lot out of it. Like it, I don't want to be, but there's a lot coming back. Like we think we're giving that way, but there's a lot coming back this way for our, in the bonds of our family unit. And yeah. So
it humbles us, it kind of puts you in your place a little bit. And especially when you're a young kid and you go, oh wow, like my toys and my running water isn't like, it's not just everyone has that. It changes your perception on life. So then it makes you live a lot better.
You're really lucky to have grown up that way. I mean, as I said, like we were super privileged, but I definitely didn't have those experiences. I mean, Devon and Dylan and Keena's, growing up is really extreme in terms of having the opportunity to like globetrot, at the age that you did. But that exposure is so important. And actually, like, I think like Nigel, you were saying to me, like one of the hardest things about having a really impactful experience is talking to people that can't remotely relate to it or understand it. And I'm not trying to do that in the kind of annoying, like on my gap year kind of chat of like, don't get how beautiful the sunrise is kind of thing. But I actually feel like a lot of my friends who think it's a bit weird to spend a summer holiday living in a slum or a remote area in Uganda actually just don't have the concept of how enjoyable it is to be a meaningful part of somebody's life. Yes. And also, you know, like I said, experiencing the culture and the food and the people and all those things is awesome. But, you know, I have like, I don't even have a family yet, so I don't know what that feeling that you're talking about, Nigel, is. But I do have a feeling like when I'm sitting down for dinner with like 15 people in the room and feeling like I'm genuinely trying my hardest to contribute to these people, not just on a financial level, but to know them all personally and share my experiences with them. And then you end up learning stuff from them as well, which sounds super cliched and corny, but it's true. And yeah, I wish that more people would just give it a go. And I, as I was saying, I think you were really lucky, Dev, to be doing that from such a young age. And it probably makes you want to do it as an adult, right?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely.
I know. Yeah, that's great. Wow, we could go on all day here, but we should probably cut it down. I've got so much recording space on my Zoom.
Yeah, we'll shut her down. We'll shut her down. If anyone wants to know more about Tommy Holmes, we'll put some links into the description. Other than that, do you have any final words for us, Tommy? Thanks so much for coming on the show too, by the way.
Yeah.
Nothing at all. Thanks so much for taking such an unfamous or, you know, unsuccessful person onto your podcast. And if anyone does watch it and is interested in doing like small time kind of philanthropy or wants to know what it's like to jump in the deep end and stuff like that, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. I'll give you guys the links.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll put that all in the description. Definitely check in. Thanks so much for coming on the show, man. It means a lot to me and my dad here. And we've been waiting for this one for a while. You are a legend. You are a legend in our minds, you know, so we're going to put it out that way. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Lots of respect for you, Tommy, and watch you grow up from a young guy, and to be just a great guy now. And it's just been awesome having you on. And like I said, we could go on forever, and we'll have you back. We'll have you back and check.
We'll do another one. Exactly.
Hope so. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All righty. I am going to thank you.